Plat Valorant First Strike preview videos coming right at you. It's me, Sideshow with Wyatt, and we're doing Vision Strikers today. They are the top team in South Korea. You like that intro, Wyatt?
Yeah, no. What I like about the intro is the context that the viewers don't know, right? This is the intro off the back of you leaving, saying like, "Oh shit, I'm sleep deprived." You just came back with that. What the hell did you do when you left? You just slammed the Coke energy.
Yeah. Wait there. Whoa, gonna hide that. I got some white flecks around my nose. Yeah, dude, I just came back and I was just hyped to talk about the top team from South Korea. I just come from casting the Overwatch League, or I'm not casting, watching the Overwatch League Grand Finals, where there was a bunch of cracked South Korean kids just winning money. So why not talk about some more over in Valorant? It's really weird talking about Vision Strikers, honestly, Wyatt, because South Korea in South Korea in Overwatch and in League of Legends is such a dominant region. I mean, like, dominant. And okay, maybe not in League of Legends anymore now that the LPL has risen up a lot, but historically, Korea has been huge in any esport that they have culturally gotten into in a big way. And yet Valorant has not really kicked off massively in Korea, and it's the same kind of core of people that were incredible in CSGO, a game which also didn't get big in Korea, that are now big in Valorant. And to say that they are dominating the other teams in Korea would be a massive understatement, I feel. They are pooping on them.
Yeah, it hasn't even been close. If you go to their match history, all you're seeing is just green. They just win. They have never lost. They win every game. It's not even close. They have, I mean, in their spare time when they're done dominating the other Korean teams, they just go and destroy the other teams from the other Asian countries. Notably, their biggest competition is Absolute Jupiter, the top team over in Japan. And when they play them, I mean, even still, it's not a particularly close game. They have the best showing against Vision Strikers, but that's not saying much when they really just did not stand much of a chance. They are, at the moment, far and away the most dominant team in Asia. And yeah, as you said, most of their players, they did come from the CSGO background. For CS fans who may recognize the team name, they were on MVP PK, who were the top Korean team for the longest time. And interestingly, they've sort of brought over what they were known for in CS, which was a unique usage of the utility in that game, over to Valorant, where that is really the most notable thing about their gameplay at the moment is their utility usage.
Yeah.
And it is the main reason why they are so dominant. I mean, obviously, the players that they have are some of the most skilled in that region, but it is the mix of the skill with impeccable utility usage. And not just in that the utility and the way they're using it is inventive, because it is. It's also the timing of it is so good.
Yeah.
It's in the moment retakes that are so impressive to me. They will, no matter which agents they have alive, if they are retaking a site, they all know exactly where to send each piece of their utility at the exact same time. It is so refined, and it looks to be a testament of their work ethic and level of teamwork.
Sure.
And it is just far above the rest of the region right now.
Yeah, I want to hit a little bit more on that utility usage as well. I've got a video that's on my channel where I broke down some of the set plays from Vision Strikers, but I mean, the plays and the coordination and the timing of their utility is unparalleled by any other team. There aren't, as far as I'm aware, any other teams in Valorant that have drilled these kind of, calling them executes feels like they're just kind of pushes into sites. They're not really, but they are executes in the most basic sense. The team knows exactly what pieces of utility are going to be used, and it's like boom, 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 boom. There is some piece of the map that is taken, some players that are flashed out of position and killed, this kind of stuff. But there's often 4, 5 different pieces of utility that are being combined together. And what I think a lot of the audience won't quite get intuitively is that doesn't mean the utility is all just used at once. Like, people aren't just saying, okay, go, and everyone presses their button at the same time. The timing is much more complex than that. one person on the team has to wait a couple of seconds for someone else to get into position and still know exactly when to use, for example, a breach flash after the Jett has got into a certain location. And the timing of everything is perfect. So it indicates that they have put in a huge amount of time just in a server on their own, drilling these things over and over and over again to make sure that the timings are just microsecond perfect. And it pays off because they look like a well-oiled machine when they're running these kind of plays in game.
Yeah, absolutely. They are so effective at catching players out. One of the main sort of duos that you highlighted in the video on your channel that is sort of the driving force of their team, in my mind, is Stax and RB. That's the Breach and the Jett on their team. A lot of their set plays, specifically on defense, are where they will set up some unique flashes. The Jett will dash in to try to open up, get an entry pick, or not an entry pick rather, but just an opening pick on defense to give their team the man advantage, and then they'll back out. That's something very common that you'll see from them. And it's one thing to execute those at the beginning of the round. Now that does take drilling and practice. And aside from all that, just the willingness to sit in a server with your whole team and just try shit, just learn. They're creating, these are unique strats.
Oh yeah, they haven't copied them off anyone else. These guys have made them up 100% for sure.
They're making them up. They're incredibly complex. So it's an astounding amount of work that goes into doing that. And as I was saying, it's not just that it's like the round starts, all right, everyone do your thing. That does happen, and those do work, and they are impressive. But it's the mid-round plays that they make with the utility, or rather going into post-plant situations to either defend the spike or to try to defuse it. It's so impressive, the timing that they're able to use in those situations. They are really just such a unique team in the level of team play that they're able to bring. It is really unique. And yeah, those two players for me are really the standout players, RB, the Jett, and their Breach, Stax.
Yeah.
Stax to me being the best player on their team right now. That is sort of the one. I mean, is there anything else you'd like to say about their utility before we?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I just want to go through the history of the players a little bit because you mentioned that these guys were all playing on the top Korean team, MVP, but also I don't know whether you're aware of this, but it goes even further back than that. You've heard of the 1.6 team We Made Fox, right? They were they were like the Korean team, and they were just drilling things in servers, and they had like these crazy flash timings on a bunch of different plays that they did. Well, two of the players that are on Vision Strikers were actually on that team to start out with, so like going all the way back to 1.6. And the two players are Glow, who is their IGL, who plays the Omen most of the time for them, but sometimes Brimstone, and Termi, who is their head coach too. So they have the head coach and the IGL have so much history as basically always being involved with the top CS team in Korea. Whatever iteration that was in, whatever organization they were under, Glow and Termi have been involved in some way with these top Korean teams across it all. And I assume that this kind of style, because it has lasted throughout, as far as I'm aware, all of the top Korean teams, comes from these guys. And has kind of been taught to the lower, or rather newer wave of talent as they've come into Korea and kind of replaced the old guard slowly over time. So I find that really interesting, is that they are playing this kind of style that's been passed down by a former generation of CS talent, and yet they've still made it work so well in a brand new game with mostly players from MVP, but also a new guy to the team as well, Zest, who plays their Sova. I think he was on like one of the other teams in Korea, but he wasn't directly on MVP.
Yeah, and it seems this game would be the perfect opportunity to actually try to adapt that style in a new game, right? I mean, it's similar enough, but the utility is such an important factor in this game. It's all brand new. Everybody's trying to learn and adapt, and they are ahead of the curve in terms of that. I think really, if you're going to go past the utility, what's unfortunate, the reason, or what is holding them back, seems to really just be their individual skill level not being particularly high. And that might just be a symptom of the fact that, yeah, Korea, CSGO, CS in general, it was just never a mainstay game in the region. There was never an enormous amount of competition. And so, in terms of the individual level, these guys might really have not had to push themselves much further. Um, Also, it was not incredibly often that they would be at international tournaments anyway. So you didn't really get to see them that often. Um, so I unfortunately think that that has held them back, at least on that front, over the years. And at this point, I worry about them competing in the international scene, how well they will do as the skill level individually. I mean, if you look at a top team in the other region, like we just talked about G2 or Sentinels, I mean, it's just a world of difference in terms of that, right? Like how far can these set plays that they're inventing take them?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, is that this team looks like they are doing one specific thing better than everybody else in the world, i.e. the like creativity of these set plays and how drilled they are. But at the same time, a lot of their other game, like the way that they play the map control, doesn't seem to be top level, and the just fragging not being at the insane level as the other top teams in the world. I worry about how that would actually work. At the same time, if you hadn't done your research on Vision Strikers, I think you would get taken off guard so much by their kind of way that they get up in your face. Like a lot of these set plays are really aggressive kind of set plays, and you would be just scared of them because you don't know how deep their playbook is. You don't know whether they could throw some other weird play at you from another side of the map. I think there'd be a bit of fear associated with that. But yeah, once you kind of figure them out and have a plan to shut down their set plays, if things get to a more defaulty kind of style, I don't think they would be particularly favored there. I mean, you talked a little bit previously about Stacks and how you thought he was the best player on the team. The stats would also back that up. I mean, RB has slightly better kill per round, but as we've previously said, he's the Jett player and he's set up a lot of the time in their set plays to get the kills. So really, if you take some of those away because he's directly being set up by the rest of his team, Stacks generally does look like he just has the best awareness and fragging, like game sense and fragging, I suppose you would say, of all the other players on the team.
Yeah, unfortunately, RB is sort of a good example of this. Yeah, he in these set plays, he is the guy being set up to get the kills. And outside of that, it just looks like you're watching a different player at times. In those set plays, he looks so comfortable. He hits all the shots. He will always get the kills. But in the mid round, in the clutch situations, in just the heat of the moment engagements where he has to hit a crucial shot, he just doesn't really come up. And I feel that that is a problem really across the board outside of Stacks. Seems to me be the only player who, in a scrappy engagement, is going to turn up and get those one or two crucial kills to get the round win. It was even something we saw when they do face off against Absolute Jupiter, the best team in Japan. Jupiter doesn't have an insane amount of individual skill, but they are pretty individual skilled. And even in that game, where Vision Strikers beat them fairly handily, I mean, there were just so many rounds that they were losing just based on the fact that Jupiter, sort of a lesser team, their players individually were just good enough to win a lot of these engagements, and it was unfortunate. I mean, it seems to really be the thing that if Vision Strikers do eventually end up losing, which surely they will at some point, I think it'll be to a team coming up that just has the raw talent. Because in a hypothetical scenario, if I play out of my mind, how would it happen if Vision Strikers played against, even let's take like a lesser NA team, like a T1 or a Dignitas, like a team of that tier? If you were to put them up in a BO3, I think it becomes a matter of how many plays do Vision Strikers actually have to catch them off guard in a long, grueling game? Because I feel that if an opponent is able to keep it close with them over the long term, their individual skill will reign supreme. It's sort of how G2 will often win these close games anyhow, because they have so many better players than the other team that are just going to win these clutch rounds. I don't think Vision Strikers have the clutch players on their team. They don't look good in scrappy fights. They don't look good in raw aim duel. And that is just an enormous part of the game at the end of the day. You
Yeah,
have to be
sure.
able to get kills.
Yeah, yeah.
And I unfortunately think that if you take them international, against a lesser strategic team that has better aimers, like, Brax,
Sure.
that's just the type of player that could just dunk on them in just a regular straight up fight. In a, they're on attack, Brax holding down a bomb site. Can they get him off the site? Can they clear him if Brax is the cipher? I don't know. That seems to be the type of tier player that they would genuinely struggle against. So I just wonder how far that their style will actually take them when we do get to the point that they're, are going to be international lands.
It is a really interesting question as well, because their utility usage is so good. And when you compare Valorant to CS, the utility has a much larger component. I mean, I'm showcasing a VOD right now. This is one of their set plays that you see here on Ascent Defense. You can see a breakdown if you go to my channel, but otherwise you can just take a look at this version of it here. But how much does utility really play a role in Valorant? It's obviously a large component, but you still need to be able to go toe-to-toe with your opponents when it comes to the fragging. And it's almost inevitable that a smaller scene like Korea, which it is smaller at the moment, it doesn't have the same kind of infrastructure when it comes to the organizations. It doesn't have the same player base from what we can tell based on like PC bong numbers, for example. It's only sat at something like 1.3% of people of playtime at PC bongs, which is basically like internet cafes in Korea. That's normally a pretty good measurement of how popular the game is. It might be less and less over the years as people get more and more PCs in their homes, but it always has been a pretty good measurement of the popularity of a game. With a smaller scene like that, you're just playing a numbers game at the end of the day. Like, if everyone in the world played Valorant, you would find hidden talents all over the place. And because certain player bases are smaller, there are certain people that have just never thought to play the game and would be really good at it if they tried. And so if there's only a small population of people playing the game in Korea, there's only a small population of elite level players that can actually come out of that small overall population. So I think that the style of Vision Strikers is really good for maximizing the potential of players that aren't individually as good. Like, it is a wonderful style for getting the most out of a team that is lower in terms of its skill compared to the other global talent. I can't think of a better one. Like, you couldn't come up with a better style for worse aimers to still get big results. But at the end of the day, I do agree with you that if these guys went up against other global talent that understands how to play the game to a higher level than the people they've been playing against domestically, they would struggle once their playbook is expended.
Yeah, unfortunately as well, I think mid-round, just a world of difference in the way that they use their utility if they have to do something on the fly versus it being a set play. Their mid-round utility usage, I've seen them either misplace or just waste many smokes, etc. It happens very often that they misread the enemy position. They smoke the wrong angle. I see them do it in a mid round more than almost any other team, I would say. So they have a lot to work on in terms of that. I think what's interesting as well, obviously, I think one thing important to note, I don't think we mentioned it, is that though it was sort of assumed that this game would be big in Korea, they are struggling in terms of numbers in Korea because of the Vanguard anti-cheat on PC, on the computers in PC bongs, right? So and as far as I know, that is still the case. So there isn't as much Valorant being played as anticipated.
Yeah.
So already there's a limited player base. But regardless of that, even with the players they still have in the scene, the first strike qualifier did happen. It's like labeled under as the clan battle. And it did happen, and Vision Strikers did win. But what I think is interesting to note is that they did lose a map in the final to a team called ANG Dark Horse. And that team's players, several of them, I think 4 of them, that was actually their first recorded tournament.
Yeah.
So it does give reason to believe that there are players already going to be coming up, and the next generation of players in Korea maybe we'll be able to surpass them really in a shorter period of time that maybe we have anticipated, just based on their actual individual skill levels being higher.
Right, and that's something that's also really important to note here is that with how incredibly drilled Vision Strikers look with a lot of their play, you would expect that if your players are of equal skill and you've put in all of this work in the server, you would expect to be significantly ahead of the competition. And they are. They've been winning. They're on something like a 24-match win streak. Like I think it's even higher than that, actually. I think it's into the 30s now, actually, after their most recent matches a couple of days ago. So obviously, crazy good. Even better than G2, you could argue, because not only have they won all of the BO3s, but I think they've won all of the BO1 games as well and this kind of stuff. So yeah, outrageous kind of dominance in their region. But they are still losing maps here and there where the competition in Korea, I think, is nowhere near the level that it is in Europe or even in North America or Brazil. The competition in Asia is clearly much weaker than the other three major regions. So if Vision Strikers had the individual talent as well as these really cool set plays, you would expect to see them push quite a bit further ahead. And maybe you could argue that that level of consistency is never really achievable because of like the human mental. You just can't stay that consistent for that long. But when I look at their results, sometimes I feel like, wow, how did that get so close with such an unknown team? I don't know. Maybe it's unfair to think that a team hasn't been dominant enough when they're on a 30+ match win streak. Maybe that's incredibly unfair analysis. But when I've been watching some of their tournaments, the teams that they're playing against have done absolutely nothing, and it still gets a little hairy in a lot of the mid rounds when I feel like a team that is so clearly prepared should be just surging ahead.
Yeah, it is just a lack of mid-round game sense, an inability to be fluid in the mid-round, to take map control, to effectively use their utility in the mid-round to do so. It's just not something you see them do. They oftentimes, when you watch them on attack, if they're not able to set up and execute on a site as intended, they will just hard rotate all the way through the spawn to just go to the other site and set up and execute there. They don't really do a lot of actual map control play or pressuring through the mid. I keep like a Ascent, I think, is a good indicator of that. The way that they play it, they struggle horrifically with taking mid control on that map, or even just shutting down certain angles on mid. They play so passively in their spawn. It's a very interesting, but not, I mean, it's an odd way to play the map. Not interesting. It's just odd, and it's not fruitful on the rounds where they're not able to set up effective executes onto one site. Sorry.
No, continue.
And I think that that's just going to hold them back over the long term. And I don't see it as something that they can necessarily just change or improve on to such an extent that they'll continue to be dominant in the scene. I find that hard to believe. And also, I imagine at some point there will be a solution to the PC Bong Vanguard situation. There's no way that Riot doesn't want to capitalize on that market.
Sure. Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
just no way. So at some point that is going to be resolved. And if the hypothetical floodgates open, or even if it's, just the stream gates open and some people come in,
Yeah.
that'll still actually have significant impact, I think, on that scene. And I think more than anything, I hope that this Vision Strikers team sort of sets the framework as to what the Korean scene can be. It doesn't need to be these 5 guys as the dominant Korean force in Valorant until 2025. But if this is what we can expect to see from the Korean scene, if this can be sort of like, just what they're known for, if this can be the storyline, what everybody knows them for, how they play in the server, but over time they're going to actually gain individually stronger players, I think that would be a really cool dynamic
Yeah.
in terms of their place in the scene. Seeing such a hard, strategical oriented team playing against someone like a G2 who
Yeah.
just have an opposite style. That is an interesting matchup. So hopefully that can be sort of their lasting legacy on the scene, because a lot of these players have been around for a really long time, and while there are plenty of CS:GO players who've rejuvenated their careers in Valorant, it is a hard thing to do. So maybe in the future, hypothetically, we could see some of these players taking coaching roles, etc. But if this is the sort of team play that they can instill on the wider scene, you can easily see where Korea will slot in as a top contender in Valorant internationally.
Right. And I love that comparison to G2 as well, because they do play utterly opposite styles to G2, where G2 want to get a read on their opponents and play for map control and then exploit the weaknesses of their opponent and make small kind of experimental or improvised plays between players. The Vision Strikers is entirely in the opposite direction. They're not really playing for map control. They're not trying to read their opponents. They're going for plays that they have already cooked up in the lab, and they're going to try and run those repeatedly against you. I love that comparison. I just found their win streak. It is on 30. They've won 30 matches in a row now at this point.
It is absurd.
And I wanted to kind of ask what the expectations are for First Strike. I mean, they've won 30 wins in a row in Korea and also in Asia wider as well. Clearly, this team should be winning First Strike in Korea.
Yeah, they should be winning. The only real way, this is a shitty, this is such a terrible explanation, but I was going to say the only real way I could see them losing is to a team we've never heard of, which is like that's a terrible point. But I actually think it is realistic. I do actually think that is the only way that they might lose, is if we see a team that we've never really seen before outperform them individually.
You mean just in terms of them having some hidden talent that has previously been unknown in the scene, and they just actually end up being really good at like the individual skill?
I mean, like this ANG Dark Horse team, they did take a map off them. For 4 of them, this was their first recorded tournament yet. If a team like that improves over the next couple months, I could see a future where Vision Strikers do lose. But I think if you're going to base how they're going to perform on the established teams that we've seen them play against, I mean, we've watched them beat literally every team.
Yeah.
They should not lose to any team that we currently know exists in Asia. So genuinely, I think you would have to have some unknown team just show up, insane individual skill. And key thing to note, I mean, at this point, if you're a team playing in this region, you better be studying these games.
Yeah.
You should know what Vision Strikers are going to go for at this point. Yeah. There's only so many, well, maybe, I mean, you would think that time would only allot for so many new strategies and set executes to be invented, right? There is no infinite time loop that they can enter to just create as many breach strats as they want. At some point, other teams, it takes less time to study what they're doing than for them to invent a new strat.
Definitely should.
So at some point, the other teams should know what they're doing. And if they have the requisite skill, which, I mean, it looked like even if a team like Absolute Jupiter were adequately prepared for what they were going to do, it could have been an even closer game. It was like a 13-10, 13-7 loss. Even they could have done a bit better. I think that could have been a closer game. I don't think they really would have won, but could have been closer.
Sure.
But I think if a team has the individual skill, they're well prepared, they could absolutely get a win. I just don't see any of the existing teams that we've seen play being able to do so.
Yeah, definitely. A quick note before we finish. Where do you think Vision Strikers would stack up in the world globally if we had them play today? Like, where do you think they would finish, would rank?
I mean, that is really tough.
Do you think they're a top 10 team globally?
No. There's no way. I mean, if you took if you take the top 4 teams of NA, EU, and Brazil, there's no way they beat any of those teams. I don't think.
You don't think they'd beat any of the top 4 teams in NA, EU, and Brazil? See, I disagree with you here. I think that they would.
Who do you think they would beat?
I think that see, the problem is about naming specific teams is that I don't really know whether they're favored against any specific team in terms of like the overall team roster pound for pound. But a lot of the teams, I think, if you had some kind of global tournament running currently, I think a lot of these teams would not be prepping specifically for Vision Strikers and would get taken totally off guard. Just because of the set executes that they run, the set plays that they run are so different to anything you see anywhere else in the world. You can play 100 games of just slow, defaulty, op-based CS in North America, and you'd get blown away by Vision Strikers if they just popped up against you one time. And you can play a ton of really scrappy but high individual skill stuff in Brazil, and you might not have a clue in hell what's happening when you get pushed on the defense by something weird that the Vision Strikers are running. I think that the style of Vision Strikers and their utility usage would be able to net them wins against some of the top teams in the world. On a consistent basis, if they were playing against them regularly, probably not. But I think that the Vision Strikers style is... it's almost like where Valorant should go. If you know what I mean. Like, I feel like they play Valorant in a way where other teams could learn so much from them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely think they could beat teams that are in the top 10, take maps off them, get an upset win. That is, I absolutely agree. Where the issue lies for me is that I think in order for them to do that, those games would likely look like blowouts. I think those would be like 13-6, 13-5 type score lines where they are just winning these crucial rounds off excellent executes, just dominating, specifically those crucial rounds, obviously like economically influential rounds, right?
Sure.
And that would lead them to winning, like, it looks like they blew out the other team. It's the close games that I think they're going to struggle in. I would probably place them somewhere within the 10th to 20th slot in the world right now. I think that's a safer spot for them.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if we want to go just pound for pound down every team in the list. That would
probably
maybe a bit too much. But I just don't think. I think they're a bit too far off from the current top 10 teams. Because if you are going down to further towards the end of the top 10, you're looking at what, like, I don't know, maybe the tier around. I don't know where we had it on our previous list, but you know, maybe you're looking around like some of the top Brazilian teams or like Cloud9.
You'd be looking at
you'd
be looking at like Gen.G, Immortals from North America. I mean, we hadn't really ranked any of the Brazilian teams, but you'd be looking at people like Fusion Fraggers, for example, or Game Landers, if you didn't have them way further up the list. And then Europe. I mean, what kind of level are you looking at in Europe there? Probably, I don't even know.
It's kind of a weird drop off in Europe, to be honest. I mean, maybe the new Bonk, honestly.
Yeah.
The new Bonk might be around there.
Yeah.
I could easily see them getting maps and maybe even a series off a team. Certainly BO1s. I mean, if there were a tournament that had some sort of Swiss BO1 format or something, I could see them taking plenty of odd map wins off of other teams within the top 20. But yeah, I would put them somewhere from 10th to 20th, probably likely somewhere more around the like 13 to 15 spot or so.
Sure.
That's about right place.
I think that the important thing to focus on for Vision Strikers is that people should be watching this team to see strategies that they've never seen before. Like, you should watch this team not because each player is inspirational, but because if you want to get good at a certain agent and how to use the utility within a team structure, you can go and watch any of these guys to learn some really cool utility usages. And if you want to see strategies that you know you will never experience in ranked, never, ever, 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 then go and watch Vision Strikers, because they have a level of discipline that I promise you, even if you play in Radiant, you will never experience unless you're on a team that is willing to put in outrageous amounts of time into the server.
What you said is no exaggeration. I think it is such a true statement that what they do genuinely looks like the future of the game.
It does.
It looks like when you watch Vision Strikers, it's like, oh, are we in 2022?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it looks like. It genuinely looks like gameplay from 2 years in the future. But now it is really incredible. And I do see what they're doing as where the game will be headed, because there is really no drawback to mixing in some of these executes and defensive set micro plays to go for picks. There's no reason not to integrate things like that into your game. Even if you're a team that decides to go for one of those plays one every 2 Haven games, there's really no reason not to go for it.
Yeah, throw it in. I mean, it makes your opponent scared that it could happen. So it has a not even, I don't want to say a psychological impact like they're scared and so it makes them play worse. They are actively going to take more passive positions on the map just because you could run a play like that. Like, it will have a direct impact on how your opponents play if you showcase the ability to run plays like this. And also, it'll sometimes net you really crucial rounds. And the combination of a few major factors in Valorant make that style much more suited than CS, in my opinion. The utility is much more varied, and there are just so many different options for utility. It's not just smokes and flashes. You have so many other creative things that you can do in the game. And also the spawn doors, like the spawn walls themselves, change the timings of the map and make the positioning of your opponents much more predictable. You know where they're going to start at the beginning of the rounds, and it's within one jet dash from you sometimes. Like, that is so different to CS, where you start on absolute opposite sides of the map when it's go time, and you don't quite know whether an opponent is going to be near to you once you actually run forwards and get to a place in the middle of the map. The combination of those two things makes this style of Valorant this style of playing CS-based games very potent in Valorant. And it really does feel like the future when you watch Vision Strikers play. And you can just imagine in 2 years, in 3 years' time, people looking back at teams like even G2, who look like the best team right now, and being like, wow, these guys just really didn't have like any great strats. They're just trying to read their opponents. It's all so basic. And you look at Vision Strikers and you're like, okay, there is a team with a very clear and advanced playbook that takes some serious work to counter strat and to have like an idea of how you're going to stop these plays from happening when they are executed. Because they're so fast, like you don't have time to be able to throw out your own counter plan. They're just in your face already. It is the future, and Vision Strikers are taking us there. Then they strike me, Wyatt, as a team that is leading the way, but isn't gonna see the brave new world that they create.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree. 100%. I can easily see the future play out here, where once the PC bong issues are solved, there are going to be so many upcoming Korean players. Because again, you got to think about how long some of these guys have been playing CS, been playing games competitively. It's a long time.
Yeah.
They're going back to 1.6. I was, graduating goddamn middle school, and these guys were throwing flashbangs. So if you go back, what I'm trying to say is those guys are going to get surpassed. Such is the nature of life, evolution, right? There are going to be these young players surpassing them.
But I mean, that IGL is 32 years old.
I mean, yeah, if he, at some point here, these guys, they're going to pass down this knowledge that they've gained to the next generation.
Yeah.
And it's the next generation of Korean players who will exude not only the insane skill, FPS, just insane FPS skill that you see in a game like Overwatch, for instance, where the Korean DPS players are just unreal.
Yeah.
There will be those players in Valorant eventually. And if they can also exist in a team infrastructure that likes to use strats like Vision Strikers, that is something to actually really look forward to in the scene. I mean, that is a potent combination. That is a world #1 combination, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the influence of Vision Strikers, I feel, is going to be felt long after their players actually have disappeared. I was about to say dead and gone, but they're not that old, man. But after Vision Strikers stop competing at the top level, their influence, I feel, is still going to be felt in the Korean scene, because it is that style of gameplay. You can put a lot of these scenes into boxes, right? It's like Europe is incredibly good fraggers, and a lot of, well, I don't know whether you can really put the entire style of Europe in one box. Europe, very good fraggers, great at playing like map control games a lot of the time. NA playing a lot of the jet AWPing, very default kind of style. Brazil is playing crazy aggressive, like wild kind of plays, but really high individual skill. And Korea at the moment fits pretty heavily in the box, represented by Vision Strikers, as fantastic set play and execution with utility usage. They are a lot of fun to watch. Don't be put off by the fact that they are dominating their opponents. Just go and witness some brilliance happening. Don't think too much about how they would stack up against the other top teams. Just enjoy it for what it is, which is creative, flashy, inspirational Valorant gameplay that a lot of other teams in the world could learn from, to be honest.
Yeah. And not a lot of other teams in the world, I think, that would have that level of, I mean, I guess I'll just say grind. That level of dedication to the craft. Just to take the time to invent and perfect your own set executes. That also, most importantly, work.
Yeah.
They're good. It's not easy to do. It is truly impressive. They are, it's impressive, and it makes them an incredibly fun team to watch.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I would love to see them succeed at the international level, but yeah, I think more likely than that, we're just going to see their influence years down the line as the game evolves, changes, and more players in that region step into the game.
Yeah. There we go then. There's a little primer on Vision Strikers for all of you that haven't been able to catch matches of them, or have perhaps only seen highlight videos hanging around of some of their set plays. We're going to be doing more First Strike preview videos, so subscribe to the Valorant Plat channel. Catch the podcast whenever it goes live as well, which will normally be on Tuesday mornings, I think. And let us know in the comments which team you would like us to take a look at next. We're going to be doing some from Brazil. We'll have Bren and Matt and Reinforce as well, going through some other teams from a range of different scenes. And we're going to cover a lot of the top teams from a lot of different regions. So let us know in the comments which team you want to catch up on, whether that's from a major region or maybe somewhere a little more hidden. But yeah, we will catch you on the next one. Peace!